when you get into like, do this and don't do this and say this and don't do that, it almost takes away the fun of, wow, I get to learn about something that I'm interested in public health from someone with more experience. This is kind of exciting, and I think it's nice to keep that passion. But these are reasons why networking can be a barrier for me, is thinking about, oh, am I using a bunch of I statements, or am I clear in my goal? Like, I'm trying to make sure I've checked these boxes, and then it becomes like a chore, and then it's not a fun thing anymore.
This is the Public Health Insight Podcast.
Before we move on, it is important to note that the views expressed in this podcast are our own and do not represent any of the organizations we work for or are affiliated with.
In the previous episode, LaShawn, Linda, and Gordon talked about what networking means to them, the nuances of networking in the fields of public health and global health, barriers to networking, and the overall benefits of networking before you're in need of a job. In this episode, they share some practical tips you can use to connect with people you're interested in learning from, where you can meet other public health professionals, and how the pandemic has closed some doors for networking while opening other ones. This is where we left off.
Okay, so we've been talking about what networking is from the public health and global health professional perspective, but now let's talk about some of these strategies and kind of how we can actually go about doing these things. And we'll be providing some examples of each of these strategies so people can get an idea of how to actually do it. So let's start off. What are some strategies that you all use to network? And maybe you could share some of your tips as well.
So I don't know if this is a strategy, but a couple years before I went into my MPH, I found myself at a conference, and it was in Ottawa, and at the time I lived in Alberta. So as context, I didn't know anyone there. But I find the best way to meet people at a conference is around the meal times, usually around lunch, because you just end up sitting. I had to sit at a random table with strangers. And so in general, people are like, oh, what brings you here? Because the conference, people want to make friends. And through that conference, I became aware of the Western MPH program. And then I ended up going to Western for the MPH program. But had I not spoken to the people sitting beside me during that mealtime, I may not have heard about the program and made that connection. So it's awkward, and for me as an introvert, I hate it. I hate small talk. So I try to do it while we're eating, because that's when people just want to like take a break from the talks through the day.
Oh man, that totally is a throwback to pre-COVID times. That also reminds me.
The conference?
Yeah, right. So that reminds me, now those were kind of traditional events, but some of these events have shifted online into a virtual setting. And Gordon, I'd like you to talk a bit about that virtual podcasting summit that we went to and some of the network strategies that we used, and specifically some of the outcomes that came from that little networking session we had.
Okay, so yeah, as newer podcasters, we always try to put ourselves in position to learn from people in the industry who are doing this longer than we have, learn about success strategies that they've implemented, learn about some growing pains, lessons learned, and then how people overcame those. So there was a podcast growth summit that was hosted a few weeks ago. I think it was in April. So just like a normal web conference, normal virtual conference anyway, you have kind of a keynote speaker. You're able to see their bio, their area of expertise, what they're passionate about. You're able to attend their talk, pay attention, make notes if there's something that you want to follow up on, if they didn't elaborate in their talk. And that's where, keep in mind, the fact that we signed up in our free time to attend this means that we had a goal in mind, which was to go there and learn. So it's not necessarily that, maybe I'm different because I will set a quota for me to talk to someone.
You're different.
At least, yeah, I'm a little bit different. And I think it's part of it where I was not a networking person in the beginning. So I actually would have to force, the easy way for me to take was to not to talk to anybody. So I actually had to impose something on myself to actually do it. Okay. So anyway, I always set like a 1, just like even if it's just your presentation was great, keep up the good work. that's the end of the day. I just need to talk to one person. Not to say that you have to do that, but that's just my approach.
I like that, yeah.
So yeah, we liked it. This presentation was about one of the ones that stood out for LaShawn and I went to the conference, and one of the ones that stood out was one of the speakers was talking about search engine optimization strategies. And given that we're going to be launching our blog and start doing public health, global health pieces, we wanted to know sort of how to create a blog in a way where it's searchable in Google and kind of the readability was good and stuff like that. So we were paying particular attention to some of the tips he was giving. And there was an opportunity after his talk where it was a nice virtual software where you could sit at a booth and you could see the speaker at the booth, and then you can go and sit at the virtual booth, and then a video thing pops up where you can like have a speed dating networking
That's so cool.
thing with the person. So LaShawn and I basically hijacked the table because there was only 4 people allowed to sit there. So it was
the
2
of you were
plus
half
1.
the table?
Pretty much, we have table and no one else came. And we asked, first of all, he could see we were passionate and we weren't just doing it because we had a lot of questions, and he could see that we paid attention. We related it to the work we were doing. We asked him how he was, and he was very flattered. We also offered value. We're like, it's good that you mention this because the way we're doing it now is this way. And there were some times where he's like, oh wow, I didn't even think of that way to do it, and that's not a bad way. So don't undersell yourself either in those interactions, because just casually talking, stuff can come out, and don't make it a one-way conversation as well, right? So we learned a lot from it.
Yeah, my favorite part about that as well is there was many booths, and in like a real conference, like maybe you see someone you want to talk to across the room and you're kind of scoping them out to see when they're done talking to X amount of people so you can make your way in. Gordon and I basically had a strategy where we're moving table to table virtually, getting closer and closer to kind of make our way into that setting and to join that booth with him. So he could see us, I guess, but we could also see him, and we're kind of inching closer and closer to the table so he could see us virtually approaching him. So
Yeah.
it was just a cool little innovation that software we were using allowed us to do.
And you know what too? We kind of had a back and forth with goals and being clear. Sometimes your goals will become apparent during someone's talk.
Yeah.
So someone can say, this is what you do to get this job. And it's like, ding, my goal of this interaction is to find out what you meant by that statement. Right? That's a goal, right? And that kind of informs how you interact with them, because you're going to ask them about that specific comment they made. So sometimes you can go into a conference, and the conferences, seminars are great places to network, and not really have, my goal is just to be, a goal can be just to be open to what's manifesting. And then you go to a talk, and then the lights, turn on, and you're like, I want to follow up on that because that's super interesting. So you can make a goal within seconds. And if you don't have a goal, you don't need to force yourself to talk to someone unless you're just genuinely interested in their previous work. So
So moving along, what do we all think about emailing as a means or strategy for networking?
I think that emailing, don't count it out as like, oh, this is an old school method. There are a lot of professionals who only use emailing, for example. They may not be active on LinkedIn. They may not have a Twitter. So I think emailing is good, but you have to be open to not getting a response. It may get lost in people's inboxes. And if you're emailing, it has to be concise, like to the point. It's like, it's not a place to write an essay. So there's just maybe do a couple drafts of your email first. But I've had some successes with emailing of just like trying to schedule something more, like email to schedule perhaps a coffee chat or informational interview. So I've only used it as a stepping stone to more.
Emails for me is kind of tricky. I don't like email as a primary form. Not primary. The initial point of contact, I should say. I think it's dissociated from you, like as opposed to I rather social media connections first. That's how I tend to do it, and then once I have some kind of rapport established, I will follow up by email, and they'll send me their email directly. Because, and the reason I do this is, if there's someone that, if you're kind of cold networking, sure, you can send 10 emails out, and maybe you don't really care if no one responds. I'm very deliberate in who I want to reach out to, and it's because I want to talk to them. So I will do things that increases the chances of them seeing me and responding. And I find that through social media is better, because social media shows you their activity. So it's a bit, what I'm about to say is a bit creepy, but what you want to do is, if someone posts on LinkedIn every day, like every hour, they're on LinkedIn. So they're gonna, whether they respond to my message or not, they will see my message when I say,
Right.
hey, great, whatever, and that just increases the chance of them acknowledging me for me to take it a step further. So that's why I don't really like email as the initial point. I want to establish like a point of contact through a more engaging platform like social media first, and then go to the emails for further correspondence.
And I guess you just need to know who you're trying to reach out to. What is their primary method of communication? Because, like, sometimes there's a research paper that you found really interesting, you want to reach out to that person. There's a correspondence at the bottom. Often it's just an email, right? Or an address. Unless you want to write a letter, that's an option too. But that person may not have social media. So then, how that person communicates most likely is by email, because that's the only method they've given. So yeah, I guess it would depend case by case. But Gordon, that is a good point, to try to increase your chances of getting a response. Know how that person communicates. So if they're using LinkedIn all the time.
One thing I do too is you got to set the table, right? So if there's someone that, so for example, a lot of the times I will network, it is, to be honest, to get great people on the podcast, right? So it's a long game. So I will start, wow, this person's cool. Maybe over the course of a month, I'll comment on their posts that I find interesting, kind of this person, so that when I ultimately, oh wow, it's a crazy guy that always comments on my post. And then kind of, there's like, you're establishing kind of a micro rapport. You're kind of working yourself. And this is good for people who who kind of need to build themselves up too. Start by liking the post that they make. If you like it, don't like it just because. If you actually like it, comment, say what you learned new, then work your way up to, hey, like that post you made about this, it made me think of this, and then kind of get into what you want out of the interaction. So that allows you to kind of build yourself up to it, instead of just jumping in and cold messaging people.
My thing, at least with emails, is I'm a big fan, and I love the points you all made about understanding which method works best for that individual. I think that's important, understanding different communication channels. However, if the only thing you could find is an email, you just have to live with that. And understandably, not a lot of people use social media, and you're not trying to message people on Instagram. It's probably going to be Twitter or LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Now, with that in mind, there's a lot of specific things you can do on email. And like I mentioned earlier, you don't want to bombard them with an essay of your life. It's super important. Like many people might listen to that. Your parents might listen to it, your family, siblings, etc. But a random person you just met and you're trying to network with, they probably don't care as much. So it's important to be very specific, concise, and brief with that message. Now, I've had experiences where a lot of the supervisors I've been working with, they got emails from students interested in working in their lab, who, I guess their message that they wanted to portray is that if you hire me into your lab, I will do good science, which obviously implied that that person thought the supervisor was doing bad science, and then the supervisor is like, nope. So you got to be careful about what you say. Because it's your first impression essentially. So you want to come off like you're interested, you're genuine, and there's a purpose to this, right? And so one of these pro tips that I've always developed, and I mentioned this earlier, if they have papers or whatever, you could bring out specific examples to use that. one of the things, and this is kind of that impersonal aspect that Gordon was mentioning, it's like you don't want to use this as your first contact. But if it's your only way to use it, if this is the only kind of first contact you have, let's make that as impactful as possible. And having little cues throughout the email to kind of build that connection helps. One of the things I do is in my email signature, I maybe put, if I know that they're alumni of Queens or Western, and I'm a alumni at Queens or Western, I'm going to say a Western graduate or Queens graduate, right? And then they'll feel more kind of inclined or interested in helping you because they had that same experience. And it may work, it may not work, but it's worked a couple of times. They've noticed it and they said, glad to see your fellow alumni reaching out. So you have a very small window of opportunity when someone reads that email, and if they can see a small little thing that they can kind of draw upon, I think that's helpful.
That's a good point. Like trying to make that human connection as well.
But what you said there, you did your research. I often find you gotta do. There's nothing more offensive, I guess, than something where maybe you're asking maybe in an email an obvious answer to a question that was literally available on their website homepage in like the biggest font possible, and then you ask it. It's a big turn off, because if you had all the time in the world to do your research to me and this was the best that you could do for a first email, that's not a good impression. So make sure what you're asking as well. I mean, it sucks if, like Lynn, I think you touched on this before, like, am I gonna ask a person a question where the answer is obviously available? You shouldn't. If you need to find out a more detail, hey, I just acknowledge that you know. So on your thing, you said this, but I'm particularly interested in knowing how X, Y, Z happened. It's like, okay, you're aware about the public information that's plastered on my website, that you would have Googled. If that's the first thing that comes up in Google, but you're interested in learning more about it. That tells me that you did do some research. So I wanted to ask you though, LaShawn, what would an intro email look like? What are some of the key points you want to hit on? Like, how do you spend a whole paragraph introducing yourself? Like, what's kind of your structure for that?
So a lot of that has to come down to the research you have done, right? So if this person that I'm interested in talking to has a public health kind of research aspect to it, that they do research in that field, I would cater my email to be more public health focused. So, hi, my name is LaShawn. I currently do this, and this, and make that this, and this. Make sure it's relevant to what they're doing in as much as you can, obviously. So maybe it's working in public health in this specific field, and then kind of connect why it's related to what some of the work they're doing from, and then give an example, right? Don't spend too much time saying, oh, I have a GPA of XYZ, I have these achievements, I have these accomplishments. They don't really care too much about that. And the feedback I've been getting from a lot of these supervisors is that they want someone who's genuinely passionate and not just trying to, just lab hop and just do this for a quick thing just to have it on their resume. They want to see someone who's dedicated, taking their time to email. And the biggest red flag I would say is make sure you tailor your emails. Do not have a standard template email that you're sending everyone, especially if it's to the same school and the same department. There's been so many stories that I've heard where professors got the exact same email from the same students saying the exact same thing, and then they talked about it and it's just like, oh, that's super weird. Like, you don't want to do that because everyone talks, right? So make sure you avoid that because you don't want to put yourself in that situation either.
Right. And then how you avoid it too is to reach out to the people you're genuinely interested in reaching out to. So if you don't really care to reach out to a person and then you're going to send out a generic email, don't even bother. Like, maybe narrow your list to 3 and like you do a 3 in the first batch and then another 3 and another 3, right? And LaShawn, one thing we've been doing for emails as well that works really nice is in the email signature, we actually hyperlink LinkedIn. So one, we can kind of see if they click our profile. That's kind of a way to see if they read the email. And also they can learn a little bit more about you, so you don't have to go through all the 3 paragraphs about yourself. It's just, yeah, I'm right there. It's easy, clickable. I don't have to go copy paste your name into LinkedIn. It's right there. I can click it. Okay, he said he's interested in mental health. All of his kind of thing on LinkedIn says, it would indicate that his posts are all about mental health. Okay, he's actually interested, and then they might be more inclined to follow up with you.
Pro tips. And to follow up with Gordon's question, how I would end that email is I would have a specific call to action. What's the purpose of this email? What do you want to happen as a result of this email? Is it to set up a little coffee chat? Is it to take a look at a specific thing? Is it to get more information about a specific thing? Make sure that's clear, because a lot of times you could just say something and say you're interested, and maybe they won't reply back because the call to action is not clear, right? So make sure that's clear, and obviously sign off in a respectful manner. But yeah, that hyperlink on your name for the signature, that's key. That's a pro tip right there. So that kind of goes to the next thing in terms of making sure you have like a complete LinkedIn profile, but we'll get to that in a second. I just wanted to briefly talk about, we already mentioned it a bit, but when you have these opportunities, whether it's volunteering or your work opportunities, why is that important, or a potential opportunity to network, to find other things? Why? Because oftentimes when you're volunteering, you could just be like, oh, that's just the volunteer thing that I do. But it's much more than a volunteer thing that someone can do.
Or just a practicum.
Yeah, you're interacting with people, many people, a diverse amount of people with different knowledge and resources. So every opportunity is an opportunity to learn. That's how I see it.
And you never know when a couple years you'll end up working with the same people. You don't know when how your paths will cross again. So yeah, volunteering is clutch. Like a lot of you can use volunteering relationships as professional relationships, even if you need references, things like that. So it's a really good tool to use. I think it's underrated.
Yeah. I would agree. Keep in mind too, so if you're gonna volunteer for the Brain Injury Foundation, for example, I just made that up, you're thinking of it just the Brain Injury Foundation, but think about who the Brain Injury Foundation is connected with. So that's what networking is. One kind of multiplies into like 20, 30, maybe hundreds of other networks that you can tap into. So it's not about the end goal being the volunteer position itself. Think about the other stakeholders they have relationships and partnerships with, that your work will impact and then reflect positively on you, and then you can kind of meet more people and kind of build your network. So that's the value of the volunteer kind of practicum aspect of it.
One of my favorite things to do is, if I'm working or volunteering, I think they're both similar, you meet people on your day-to-day, whether it's online or in person. Feel free to go to a different department, have a contact in a different department, and talk to them. Do exactly what we said in the email portion of this recording. Just email them, say that you work in the department, and they're way more likely to be like, yep, you're one of us, essentially, and be like, I'm happy to have a little talk, and then learn about what they do. And I love when Gordon says this, because I think it's important. The way you frame things when you're actually talking to people is important. Don't come from a point of view where it's all about me. What can I do to do this? What can I do? Should I do this? Should I do this? Not about I. Maybe you could relate it back to the person that you're talking to and say, if you were in this position, what would you be doing? Because it helps them facilitate the conversation better, and it's more relevant to them, because at the end of the day, you want to hear from their experiences. You don't want them to be doing all the thinking and work on behalf of you. I think that's just the important point, the way you frame your questions, and we could create a whole nother podcast for that. But I think it's important that it's not about I, like we mentioned earlier.
Absolutely. I'll just say I can't resist that one. You baited me out on that. So yeah, people don't want to think for you. Like when you network with someone, that's where the whole life story comes in. Don't give someone, I know some people might be having some challenging times. Unfortunately though, it's not the person you're networking's, it's not their thing to fix if there's something to be fixed or some problem solving to be solved. So your strategy should be maybe to identify someone who you can relate with. Oftentimes, in my position anyways, I'm from Jamaica, so if someone sees that they're Jamaican as well, and they see that I came from Jamaica, that's very relatable. How did you get from here? So that their question to me would be, oh, how did you find it when you came here? How did you get from here to here? Don't ask me, hey, as a fellow Jamaican, what is your advice to me coming to Canada and then getting a job? You should infer that from asking me to talk about my experience, rather than I'm gonna try to listen into your specific needs and your specific barriers, and then try to tailor my responses to your situation. That's where the rapport comes in. Like, if you've developed a relationship over time, you can get closer to that. But on the first interaction, it should be, I'm really curious how you, seems like you started at this workplace and then went here. Would be really curious to see why and how you did it.
Just a general comment overall. When you get into like, do this and don't do this and say this and don't do that, it almost takes away the fun of, wow, I get to learn about something that I'm interested in, public health, from someone with more experience. This is kind of exciting, and I think it's nice to keep that passion. But and these are reasons why networking can be a barrier for me, is thinking about, oh, am I using a bunch of I statements, or am I clear in my goal? Like, I'm trying to make sure I've checked these boxes, and then it becomes like a chore, and then it's like, it's not a fun thing anymore. It's am I going to offend this person? And so it's trying to keep that balance of, it's a human being you're talking to, and if all else fails, if you forget all the do's and don'ts, just be respectful and have a conversation and like an ask in your email or in however you reach out.
Right. And I would just say that's a great point. And keep in mind, your first email or first LinkedIn message is not going to be that great, or it might not be the perfect one, right? And then you might reach out to someone with the worst email possible or the worst LinkedIn message possible, and they do get back to you, right? So keep in mind that you always have to be open and reflect on, okay, I sent out 10 things today, no one responded in a week. Let me be honest and reflect on why. Okay, this message could have been misconstrued as maybe asking too much, so next time I'll try. So it's not that you have to go in knowing everything. You have to be also open and honest with yourself to realize what you can do every time to improve. And maybe you improve little bits over time, but you can't just assume that you write the perfect message. Even to this day, I'm always, this is a little ASCII, and I'm sure my messages aren't perfect, but as long as, like you said, knowing that there's a human there, be genuine, people can kind of be a little bit forgiving if it's not too hectic, and then kind of go from there.
So one of the things that Gordon already mentioned was using social media as their first line of approach. So can you talk a bit more about some of the social media platforms that you think are appropriate for networking? Can I add people on Facebook? Can I add people on Instagram? Could I add people on Pinterest? What can I do?
So networking for the purpose of learning information relevant to your kind of interests or career work. From the perspective of public health, global health, that kind of field, you're mostly looking at something like LinkedIn or Twitter. If you're more of a creative, something like Instagram and LinkedIn would probably be. I don't think Twitter is a space for creatives necessarily.
Ooh, I wouldn't say that, bro.
No, just so when I say creatives, right? I'm talking about the way LinkedIn kind of displays their platform. It's more for the photography type of layout, and if that's your area of work, maybe that's a platform for you. Twitter, LinkedIn as well, but I think in the way you could do Instagram, it's really appealing for those people. Facebook kind of just is just not. Facebook has a reputation that people don't like these days, so I'm not sure what the viability of Facebook is for networking at this point. But I think it depends on why you're networking. There's some times where I like maybe there's this artist's page on Instagram, and it's, for podcasts we want to have something drawn or something, and then it would be more of a Instagram connection. If it's something like a podcast guest where people just showcase all their professional work on LinkedIn, and it's easy to see job updates, it's easy to see your tenure history, your academic history. LinkedIn gives you access to that information. So I find that LinkedIn is the best tool for me to network.
LinkedIn is definitely, I think, my preferred method of professional type of networking in terms of learning about what someone specifically does, because a person's Instagram could be a little more personal, and so it may not always reflect their professional experiences, and so that it depends on, I guess, your goal as we started out. But LinkedIn is definitely a skill, and had I not, made a LinkedIn profile as a student, honestly, probably wouldn't have one, because it's kind of like, it's not when you think of social media, you think of your Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. LinkedIn may not be your go-to unless you are actively, job seeking or trying to professionally network.
Yep. LinkedIn, the thing that I like about LinkedIn is, in this day and age, it's also, there's value in being able to separate kind of your personal life from your professional life.
Interesting.
And I think,
tell us more.
I think LinkedIn, LinkedIn just gives you an opportunity because to my knowledge, I don't think you can make your profile private where it's not discoverable on LinkedIn. So to my knowledge anyway, like if you Google search someone's name on LinkedIn, you will be able to click on their profile. Whereas something like Instagram, you could keep it to more of your friends and have that be a way to, be more of your, I guess, your natural self outside of work. So I like the dichotomy of LinkedIn and one. So whether the and one is Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, LinkedIn is that good one to put out there how you want to be perceived in amongst your peers in the professional world, and then kind of separate it from your personal life. And we know I don't know if this is what you're alluding to, LaShawn, we know some employers actually will look at your social media profile to make hiring decisions. So the appeal of LinkedIn to actually present yourself in the way you want to be perceived has value, and being able to separate out something like Instagram where you can make it private to only people you want to be in your social circle and kind of separate it that way.
What would you all say to people who think that networking during a pandemic is pointless?
Well, briefly, I will just say, because I did want to share this about LinkedIn, when I was saying that it's a skill, I found that during the pandemic, for a huge portion of it anyway, I was unemployed, and I was spending a lot of time on LinkedIn, just seeing what's out there. And I guess I didn't know this, but LinkedIn has become a place where people share, yes, their professional life, but they also intertwine their personal stories of like overcoming hardships and like things like that. So I was seeing a lot of stories, a lot of people being more creative, writing kind of blog posts or like thought pieces on LinkedIn. And I did not know LinkedIn could be used in such a creative, diverse way. And so I think perhaps because of the pandemic, LinkedIn has grown from just, I went to school here and this is the work I do, to sharing more of yourself for employers and others to see. And I was surprised at that. I'm not yet there. I don't know if I will ever use it in that capacity, but it was interesting to see that shift.
What about you, Gordon?
What about you, LaShawn?
You go first. I asked the question.
No, go.
All right. I mean, for me, like Linda just mentioned, I graduated. When I graduated from my master's, I was stuck in the pandemic as well. I graduated during the pandemic, and it was actually LinkedIn that allowed me to find the job I'm currently in. So for the practicum component, I messaged someone after doing a bunch of research. I sent them a private message. I explained my situation of how I just graduated in this pandemic. I was looking for a practicum position, but I didn't directly ask it like that. But it was basically kind of geared towards that. And I think as a student, it was probably easier to just do a direct ask like that in a sense, because what I was looking for essentially was a practicum. And basically, I sent the message out. They got back to me, and the rest is history. I currently work there. as my full-time position. So LinkedIn, even during the pandemic, was useful for me to land that job. So I'm not saying that this will work for everyone, but what I am saying is it's a possible tool. It's a potential tool that people can use to help with their searching and help with the networking and help get to the goals that they want.
And even to get inspired, people are sharing the sweetest posts about how, someone shared my resume with someone else and then they hired me, and just the goodness of humanity. And I like sometimes just scrolling on LinkedIn for fun.
Yeah, no, it's awesome to hear those stories.
Absolutely. And let us know, for those listening, if you want us to have a live LinkedIn optimization workshop. We have someone special that will be joining us from the LinkedIn sphere to share some tips. So if you want a live event, let us know on the socials or email, and we'll make it happen and let you know about it.
So Gordon, are you gonna answer the question?
Nope.
What the hell?
Yikes.
What was the question again?
Oh my god.
Networking in the pandemic.
What would you say to people that find networking during the pandemic pointless?
So what networking, or I'm going to separate into traditional networking versus virtual networking.
This is a classic Gordon response.
I like virtual networking better because you can meet more people from across outside of your local area. The norm would be, I don't think virtual networking was a norm before, where if someone kind of lived in your city, you wouldn't do a camera meeting with them. You'd kind of meet with them at a coffee shop. Now it's actually normalized that you can do screen-to-screen networking. So it's more convenient, in my opinion. It gets your feet wet. Maybe you're kind of nervous to go and sit with someone at a coffee table, and it's kind of awkward and you're kind of nervous and it's like where to end the conversation. Now you can set a Zoom meeting, put the schedule in there, you send an invite, it says 30 minutes. So I guess we're talking for 30 minutes. So I think it's a little bit clearer with virtual networking. It's more efficient, in my opinion. I'm not saying that you shouldn't want to see people's face ever again in person. I'm just saying it's a more efficient way to meet more people from different regions, getting a lot of different perspectives. I think the pandemic has thrown a dent for in-person networking, but it's opened up this new field of virtual networking where even for PHI, we're meeting people from Australia, UK, from different African countries, India, the US, that we would never meet. Even podcasting. Typically for podcasting, interviews would probably be done live in person as well. So if you're a smaller podcast, you're probably not going to have the resources to fly guests in to come and do a talk with you. Now remote podcasting is a acceptable form of podcasting as well. So there's pros and cons, but you have to enhance the positive aspects of virtual networking and minimize the kind of negative parts of it, and still kind of in an ideal world, you do a little mix of both. You talk to people locally who you can actually go and meet up with, and then you kind of do virtual for people who it's difficult to meet in person.
Fantastic.
That's a great summary.
So as a final call to action for all our listeners, we want you to go into the description of this podcast, and you'll find each of our names, LaShawn, Gordon, and Linda, and there'll be a hyperlink to our LinkedIn profiles. So we encourage you to click on those links and add us as a connection and send us a message that you listen to this podcast, or mention anything else that you're interested in. But we'd love to connect with you.
Thank you for listening to the Public Health Insight Podcast, your go-to space for informative conversations, inspiring community action. If you enjoy our content and would like to stay up to date, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. To learn more about our community initiatives and how you can support us, visit our website at thepublichealthinsight.com. Join the PHI community, and let's make public health viral.